So, very good being here with you again. Let's just take a couple of minutes to do the breathing meditation, relax the mind, center the mind, and then we'll generate our motivation, and then we'll have the talk. Okay? Lower your eyes. Come back to your breath. And as you observe the breath going in and out, let your body relax and let your mind relax. And then let's cultivate our motivation. And since we'll be discussing the Buddha's words, as the Buddha's followers, we should be in harmony. And one way of being in harmony is that we all have the same motivation. And since all of us are Mahayana practitioners, that motivation is bodhicitta. So let's take a moment and really remind ourselves that we are sharing the Dharma. We will listen attentively. We will reflect on what we hear. We will meditate on what we hear, for the long-term purpose of attaining full awakening, so that we can be of the most effective benefit to each and every sentient being. So cultivate that, let that sink in the mind. And then feel how that motivation, even if it's artificial at this moment in time, how that motivation unifies us. And then open your eyes and come out of your meditation. Okay. So last week we did volume 2, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice. And this week, we are on to volume 3, Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddhist Nature. So this is the volume that I'm currently teaching at the Abbey. So I'll just introduce the volume to you this time and cover a couple of points that I think you might be interested in. But if you want a more in-depth teaching on what this volume entails, then I'm teaching it on Friday nights, and you're welcome to join The information is on the Sravasti Abbey website, and the previous teachings have all been archived, so you can go back and listen to what you've missed. Okay, so to introduce this book, Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. Yeah, so, I was saying last week that we arranged the topics a little bit. So Samsara and Nirvana, okay, the four truths. The first two truths are Samsara. The last two truths are talking about Nirvana and the path. Okay. And then we added Buddha nature here. Usually Buddha nature is taught by teaching Maitreya's text, Uttara Tantra, and Asanga's commentary on that. But and it's taught separately. But here we put it in this volume because when you're thinking about samsara, sometimes you need something to perk you up a little bit, because samsara, thinking about true dukkha and the causes of dukkha, and then all you hear is afflictions and karma and more dukkha. You need something that's like, please tell me something nice, because otherwise, how in the world am I going to get myself out of this mess? Okay. And then also, because, talking about Buddha nature does that. But talking about Buddha nature also lets us know why it's possible for us to understand the true path, and then use that understanding to attain the true cessations. And so without Buddha nature, that would not be possible. And so that's why we brought it into this book. So His Holiness starts this book off with a chapter called The Self, the Four Truths, and their 16 Attributes. Okay? So again, like I said yesterday, he doesn't pull punches. He teaches it directly. Okay? So the part about the self, he talks about a conference he went to, an interreligious conference, where they posed 3 questions to each participant. 1, is there a self? 2, is there a beginning to the self? And 3, is there an end to the self? Yeah. So they posed this to people of different faiths. And His Holiness's reflections are quite interesting about that. And then it goes into the 4 truths. And so here we speak, a lot of it is taken from Pramnavartaka, Dharmakirti's text, because in it he explains the 4 truths in depth, and there's 16 attributes. Second chapter is called Revolving and Cyclic Existence, the Truth of Dukkha. So you'll notice I always say dukkha, I don't say suffering. I think suffering is a really incorrect translation. Yeah, because people will read a book on Buddhism and they say the first thing Buddha said is life is suffering. And then people go, I'm not suffering all the time. What are they talking about? Yeah. And it's true. We're not in what in English means suffering all the time. We have times of happiness. So the word dukkha in Pali and in Sanskrit means unsatisfactory. So we're not, physically and mentally in suffering all the time. But I think we could agree that our life is unsatisfactory. Okay? Why? Well, we don't get everything we want, for one. And when we look ahead in the future, we see aging, sickness, and death. That's unsatisfactory. Okay? So the second chapter talks about different types of dukkha and the different realms. And if you loveless, Buddhism is definitely the religion for you, because we have the 3 kinds of dukkha and the 6 kinds of dukkha and the 8 kinds of dukkha. And, you know, we're full of lists, but it's actually quite helpful when we go to meditate to have these different lists, because then we can go point by point and reflect on things. Chapter 3 talks about the true origins of dukkha. And so here we talk about the afflictions, the underlying tendencies, the fetters, the pollutants. This is all Abhidharma material. And we bring in not only the Sanskrit perspective, but also the Pali perspective and how the different fetters are listed and so on. Chapter 4 is the afflictions, their arising and their antidotes. So, you know, the order in which the afflictions arise, and then a section that I think is very interesting, the factors that cause our afflictions to arise. You know, like you're sitting there and your mind's peaceful and you're okay, and then an affliction arises. Well, what's behind that? There are causes for the arising of that affliction. So that section goes into that. And it's very helpful, because if we can stay clear of some of the causes of the afflictions, our mind is going to be much more peaceful. Okay. One of the afflictions, by the way, is media and our relations with the news, with social media, all these kinds of things, magazines, newspapers, advertisements. And when we really look at at how these things influence us, the influence is tremendous. Yeah. And our mind can get very upset through the influence of the media. So if you're able to watch the news and so on, it can become a Lamrim teaching, because everything you read about in the Lamrims is it's basically talking about the first 2 truths, dukkha and its origin. And so it can become a very good meditation on that. But if we have a tendency to get aggravated and fall into despair and so forth, or we have a tendency for greed and craving, then we need to stay clear of advertisements, social media, the news, and stuff like that, because that will make all these kind of afflictions arise. Similarly, what we seek out for entertainment, the whole entertainment industry is designed to make afflictions arise, because you have to have, like in a movie or a TV show or something, you have to have moments of crisis and high emotion. I think it's like every 3 or 4 minutes. Otherwise, people get bored with the show. Okay. And so what are those crisis points? Yeah. What are the things that make you pay more attention? Either there's sex or there's violence. And I find it extremely interesting in our culture that those are the 2 most entertaining things that we want to see. Yeah. So this voyeuristic tendency, to watch movies that are sexually explicit to some extent, but getting more and more so. And then to watch movies that are violent, and how violence becomes entertainment. And I find it just amazing to think about. You'll remember when there was the attack, what movie in Colorado? The movie was, Batman. Batman. Okay. So it was a Batman movie, very violent. When you're watching Batman and violence on the screen, it's entertainment. when the guy walked into the theater with, an AK-47 or whatever he had and started really shooting people, that was terror. And people were afraid. But when they saw it on the screen, it was entertainment. And that makes me wonder, why is on the screen, it's entertainment, but when you see it for real, it's horrifying? What's going on in our mind that we can even watch this and think it's entertaining? So to me, it's indicative of something really wrong with our culture. Anyway, as a Dharma practitioner, we need to be very careful about this. And, why do we find violence entertaining? And doesn't it reinforce our own tendencies towards violence, towards harsh speech? All the harsh speech that has been used in the public domain at the last 4 or 5 years, especially. Have you noticed that the actual discourse among citizens has declined? The way people talk to each other has really gone downhill in the last few years. And I think a lot of that has to do with what we've been seeing in the news and on social media, on Twitter, and so forth, because now it's really cool to lambast somebody on Twitter, and you don't have to look at them and see their hurt feelings or anything. You can just, let it all out, put your anger out there, threaten people's lives if you feel so inclined. And you have no responsibility for the effect of that speech on other people because it's online and, who's going to track you down? And you can do things anonymously now. So I think that's quite dangerous and, very harmful in society. Okay. Oh, so maybe I should stop here for 1 minute because last time in the Q&A time, do you remember one person asked, why do some Dharma teachers talk about politics and pass that off as Dharma? Remember the last question, somebody asked that. And then that person went on to explain, like about the vaccine, that some people don't want to take it because it hasn't been FDA approved, which now it has been, but also because they just don't want to be told what to do. So after that person said that last week, I thought about it a lot. Because to me, I use things that happen in the news as examples of the teachings because sometimes they are just perfect examples. I couldn't think of a better example of some things. So I was thinking about this thing of we don't like to be told what to do. Yeah. And I think we can all resonate with that. We don't like people telling us what to do. But when we look, our whole life, why I think this is not an issue for me of politics when I talk about doing things we don't like to do is because for me, it's an ethical issue. Okay. So it's not just, I don't want to be told what to do. I don't care what it is. Get off my back. Leave me alone. I'm an independent person. I can make up my own mind. I don't like the government trying to control me. Okay. So I can understand, people getting upset about that. But for me, this is an ethical issue. It's not a political issue at all. It's ethical because from the perspective of a bodhisattva wannabe, somebody who's trying to follow the bodhisattva ethics, then what is important to us is to do what is good for the greater number of people, and to not just be locked into what I want and what I want, what I prefer. Okay. So when I look at my own mind, and I'm just speaking personally here, when I look at my own mind, my resistance to I don't want to be told what to do is founded on self-grasping ignorance. Okay, the primary root of samsara, this independent I, inherently existent, and then attachment to that I, and inflating the value of that I. So nobody can tell me what to do because I know best and I can make up my mind, and I'm an independent person. Okay. So when we say I'm an independent person, we're thinking of ourselves really as inherently existent, like no other conditions influence me. I make up my mind, everything by myself. Okay? What Buddhism teaches us is to question that. Is that true? The I that says, don't tell me what to do, is that I really an independent person? Is it really inherently existent? Yeah. Well, if we've done a little bit of investigation on emptiness, we know, no, it's not independent. What we call I is totally dependent. It's dependent on causes and conditions. It's dependent on parts. It's dependent on the mind that conceives and labels it. So this thing that feels so threatened and provokes us to say, don't tell me what to do, is actually based on wrong conception, wrong grasping, ignorance. Mm-hmm. And the mind that says, I'll do what I please to do, don't tell me what to do. Isn't that self-centeredness? Yeah. I'm going to do what I want to do. I don't care about anybody else. Yeah. So in our present situation, it's often talked about in terms of people getting vaccinations or not, but it can be talked about in terms of anything, wearing a helmet when you're riding a motorcycle, wearing a seatbelt. Somebody could say even having red lights. Yeah, I don't want to stop at the red light. It's my constitutional right to drive straight on this street if I want to. I don't want people telling me to stop because there's other traffic coming the other way when I want to drive through. You could see how our self-centered mind can make anything into a threat to my independence and me getting what I want. And to me, that relates to Dharma practice. That's not politics. It's Dharma practice. As a person who's a member of society, am I just going to think about what's best for me? Or is it my obligation, according to my Bodhisattva vows, to think of what is better for everybody in this society and to curtail my self-centered impulses and wants? Okay, so I thought I would just throw that in because I thought about it a lot after the person's question last week. Yeah. Did you think about it much? Anybody? Yeah. Some people, yes. Some people, no. But anyway, yeah. I don't mix politics with Dharma. But for me, Dharma has to apply to every single aspect of my life. Yeah. Otherwise, what am I going to do? I only practice Dharma when I'm sitting on the meditation cushion. And then as soon as I get up, then I just do whatever I feel like, and I just follow my self-centered thought and I follow my attachment, my anger. No, that I have to put that into practice in, every aspect of my life.
Well, there was another question from last week.
What
do you recommend when one thinks or discovers their spiritual guide has hurt people?
Okay, I'll do the questions and answers. She just reminded me of one from last week, but we'll do that at the end of the session, okay? I wanted to finish going through this first. Okay, so then chapter 5, Afflictions and Karma, their seeds and their latencies. Then chapter 6 is quite interesting. Karma, the universe, and evolution. And this chapter is based on an interview I had with His Holiness many years ago, even before the idea of this series came up. Because I went to ask him, is the universe created by karma? When there's an earthquake, does our karma create the earthquake? Yeah. So this chapter 6 talks about that. It's quite interesting. Chapter 7 and chapter 8 get into the 12 links of dependent origination. Okay. So how we cycle in samsara and how we can cut that cycle. And chapter 9 talks about the determination to be free. In other words, generating what we often call renunciation, which is a term that is often misunderstood because people say we have to, the 3 principal aspects of the path. First one, renunciation. What do people think about? You have to be like Milarepa and get your skimpy little rag robe and go up in a cave where it's freezing cold and eat nettles. And that's renunciation. People think renunciation is, I have to renounce happiness and I have to suffer. Yeah. That's not the Buddhist concept. Okay. In Buddhism, what we're renouncing is dukkha. We're not renouncing pleasure. We're renouncing dukkha. We're renouncing the causes of dukkha, ignorance, anger, attachment. Okay. So we have to be very clear in our mind. That's what renunciation means. And so we renounce samsara. Yeah. And then we make the determination or the aspiration to be free, which is the mind that is directed towards attaining liberation. Okay. Then chapter 10 is seeking genuine peace. And chapter 11 is freedom from cyclic existence. Then chapter 12, 13, and 14, those 3 chapters all have to do with Buddha nature. So I thought I would focus on Buddha nature, and read a little bit from those chapters. There's also a nice little section on the Ye Dharma Dharani. When you do the blessing of the speech, do you do that every morning? Then you recite Om Ye Dharma, that mantra. So there's a nice explanation of that. Let's go to Buddha nature. Okay. What page is this? 291. Okay. So here, what I think is interesting about this book is we talk about Buddha nature from the perspective of different Buddhist traditions and different tenet schools. So we start out talking about the mind's potential according to the Pali tradition. Okay, so our Theravada friends, they don't use the word Buddha nature, but they talk about the potential of the mind. Okay, so I thought I would read some of that for you. Okay, so so there's one quotation from the numerical, the sutra, the numerical sutra, Anguttara Nikaya. And here's what the Buddha said. This mind, O monastics, is luminous, but it is defiled by advantageous defilements. The uninstructed worldling does not understand this as it really is. Therefore, for him, there is no mental development. Sounds like we learned in the Sanskrit tradition, doesn't it? Yeah. The nature of the mind is luminous. Yeah. It's clear. Yeah. It is defiled by adventitious defilements. You know, in our tradition, the example is often given of the clear sky with clouds over it. The clouds are not the nature of the sky. They can be cleared away. Yeah. So similarly, the nature of the mind is clear, and the defilements are adventitious. They're like clouds on the mind. They aren't the nature of the mind. If they were the nature of the mind, we could never be free, because they would be inherent qualities of consciousness, but they aren't. And they're based on misconception, so that when we generate the wisdom that sees things as they are, that wisdom can counteract the afflictions and remove them. Okay. So that was a quotation from the Pali Sutras. Then, according to the Vaibhasikas and the Satantrikas, okay, so these are talked about in the how the Tibetans talk about the tenet systems. Okay, so again, they don't really use the term Buddha nature, but they'll call it the disposition, like they'll call it the Arya Disposition. So for the Vaibhasikas, okay, the Arya Disposition is the mental factor of non-attachment that acts as a cause for its own resultant Arya path. Okay, so since the Vaibhasikas emphasize craving as a formidable cause of cyclic existence, it makes sense that they assert non-attachment, which is the opposite of craving, as both the antidote to craving and as the disposition in sentient beings that has the potential to bring about the realization of the Arya path and liberation. Okay, here when they talk about non-attachment as the antidote to craving, okay, non-attachment does not mean apathy. Yeah, sometimes, you know, we have so easily have misunderstandings in Buddhism. We think, oh, you get rid of attachment. That means you don't like anything. That means you don't have any pleasure. That means you don't judge anything as preferable or not preferable. You just sit there and I'm not attached. So you do this, it's okay. You do that, it's okay. I'm not attached. I'm just a bump on the log. You know, you can give me delicious food. You can serve me poop. It's all the same. I'm not attached. Huh? That's not what the Buddha meant by non-attachment. Non-attachment is a mental factor, yeah, that is the opposite of attachment. Okay, so it's a mental factor that isn't based on exaggerating the good qualities of someone or something like attachment is, but it can see things without that overlay superimposition of desirability and so forth. And so then we can see things clearly. It helps us to make good decisions. So we can still have preferences according to the situation. If you're ill, you prefer to take the medicine that's going to cure you, not the medicine that isn't going to cure you. Okay? So don't think that attachment is just, blah. Yeah, that's not it at all. Okay, so then it goes on here. That Gunaprabha, he's one of the 17 Nalanda masters that His Holiness praises so much. So he explains that the Aryas with the disposition, this is the phrase they use, has 4 qualities. So the first 3 qualities are they are satisfied with whatever food and drink, shelter, and robes they have. Okay, so it's an attitude of satisfaction. It's not blah, I don't care. It's, people gave me food to eat. This is wonderful. I'm filled with gratitude. Yeah, I'm satisfied with what they gave me. People gave me shelter. They gave me medicine. They gave me clothing. I'm satisfied with that. Instead of the mind that always says, I want more, I want better. Yeah. And this person has better than I do. That one has more than I do. If I can get more and better, then my social status increases, then more people respect me, then I become a big shot. And so we get very attached to our reputation as well. And we get all tangled up. Okay. So, and then the 4th aspect of this disposition is that these Aryas take joy in meditation and in overcoming what is to be abandoned. In other words, they love practicing, and they love when they can counteract an affliction. Yeah. For us, sometimes counteracting our afflictions, it's hard work. Okay. It really is, don't you think? Because I want to go in that direction. I'm habituated to it. And to really sit there and go, no, I'm not going to follow that, and I'm going to exercise my wisdom mind. That's difficult. Okay. So this kind of satisfaction and contentment, plus in taking joy in meditation and overcoming the objects to be abandoned. Okay. So that's the Arya disposition, according to the Vaibhasikas. According to the Satantrikas, it's this potential or seed for the arising of the unpolluted mind. Okay. So all sentient beings have this potential because all of them, at one time or another, have experienced happiness. Since happiness is the result of virtue, everyone has virtue, and everyone thus has the potential for the unpolluted mind. That's how the Satantrikas think of what we would call Buddha nature. So this potential is nourished through learning, reflecting, and meditating on the Dharma in the present life. Okay. So in general, the Vaibhasikas and Satantrikas assert that only sentient beings who will become wheel-turning Buddhas, in other words, Buddhas who appear in a dark age where the Buddha Dharma is not present, and then initially teach the Dharma in that age when it's absent, in that age and in that place where it's absent, then those are the people who attain full awakening, according to that tradition. The rest of us become arhats. Okay? So you can see different levels of spiritual attainment in those. Yeah, those two tenet systems. Then Buddha nature according to the Chittamatra system. Now we're going to see another shift. Okay, so here it's called Buddha nature or Buddha disposition, or Tathagata Garbha. Okay, so it's discussed in the Mahayana tenet systems, either by the Chittamadrans, the Madhyamakas, or the Vajrayana. Okay, so according to the Chittamadrans, as the Sangha explains it in the Compendium of Mahayana, the Buddha disposition is the latency, seed, or potential that has existed since beginningless time and has the potential to give rise to the three bodies of a Buddha. So here we really see some differences, okay? Because it's a potential that will give rise to the Buddha's truth body, okay, the Dharmakaya, and the Buddha's two form bodies, the resource or enjoyment body, the Sambhogakaya, and the emanation body, the Nirmanakaya. Okay, so a conditioned phenomena, the Buddha disposition is the seed of an unpolluted, pristine wisdom. Okay, so right now that seed is a latency or it's a latency, it's a potency in our mind. It has to be developed so it becomes that wisdom. Okay. So when this latency of the unpolluted, pristine wisdom has not yet been nourished by learning, reflecting, and meditating, it is called the naturally abiding Buddha disposition because it is beginningless. But when the same latency has been nourished by learning, reflecting, and meditating on the Dharma, it is called the transforming Buddha disposition. It is the same latency, the difference being whether or not it has been activated through our Dharma practice. So these two terms, natural Buddha nature and transforming Buddha nature, we will find also in the Madhyamaka explanation, but it'll have different meanings there, but the terms are the same. Okay, so the naturally abiding Buddha nature, according to the Chittamadras, so this latency has three characteristics. It's existed since beginningless time, and it continues from one life to the next. 2, it's not newly created, but it is naturally present. Okay, so it's the nature of the mind. And 3, it is carried by the foundation consciousness. That's according to the scriptural proponents of the Chittamatra school, and it's carried by the mental consciousness by the reasoning proponent, the proponents of reasoning in the Chittamatra school. Okay. So when the naturally abiding Buddha disposition is awakened and transforms by means of learning, reflecting, and meditating, it brings the realization of the Arya path, and at that time it is called the transforming Buddha disposition. Okay, then, it gets into the topic of one final vehicle and 3 final vehicles. Have you heard of that at all? That topic is quite interesting. Yeah. So the Chittamatra scriptural proponents, yeah, they say, let me read from here. Yeah. The doctrine of the 3 final vehicles states that once Shravaka, in other words, hearer, and solitary realizer practitioners attain arhatship, they will abide in meditative equipoise on emptiness forever and will not later enter the Mahayana and attain full awakening of Buddhahood. Okay. because there's three final vehicles, and that those three final vehicles are determined by the seeds that are in your mind and how they're nourished. Okay? So there's 5 types of dispositions: the Shravaka, solitary realizer, Bodhisattva, the indefinite disposition, and the severed one. So here, when we're saying disposition, it connotes a source of excellent qualities. And each sentient being has the latency for one of these 5. Okay? So this latency is an internal disposition that exists naturally in each sentient being's foundation consciousness. So they also assert this mind basis of all that is like a storehouse consciousness where all the seeds are stored. And they say that this foundation consciousness is what goes from life to life. Yeah. So, let's see. Okay, so those having the solitary realizer disposition have few afflictions and weak compassion. So they dislike busyness and prefer solitude. Okay, teachings on the 12 links of dependent origination touch them deeply, and they meditate primarily on this. Those with the second disposition, the Bodhisattva or Mahayana disposition, are naturally empathetic and compassionate. They purify and abandon non-virtue, create virtue, take the pratimoksha and bodhisattva precepts with the aspiration to attain full awakening. And they work for the benefit of sentient beings. Okay, so these 3, the hearer or Shravaka disposition, the solitary realizer disposition, the bodhisattva disposition, the people who have one of these 3 are definite in their path. They will not change vehicles, but will proceed according to the attainment of their own vehicle. So that if you have the Shravaka or hearer disposition, you will enter the Shravaka path. You will attain a Shravaka's arhatship. Okay, if you have the Bodhisattva disposition, you will enter the Mahayana path and attain full awakening, and so on. So you don't change going back and forth. Okay. So then, when we talk about the people with indefinite disposition, so for those people at the present, it's uncertain which of the 3 vehicles those people will enter it. Okay, their disposition is indefinite. So depending on the spiritual mentor they meet and the Buddhist teachings they learn in the future, they will develop an inclination towards one vehicle or another. Okay, so for these people, which Dharma teachers they meet, is very crucial because, well, for the other people too, it's very crucial. But for these people, it will really make a difference on whether they attain arhatship or full awakening. Okay, because the teacher and the teachings that they hear will direct them towards one vehicle or the next. Then those whose lineage is severed, this is the 5th kind of person, have engaged in extremely destructive actions or strongly adhere to pernicious views. They have little merit, great negativity, and lack integrity and consideration for how their actions affect others. Not wishing to abandon non-virtue and lacking insight into the unsatisfactory nature of samsara, they have no interest in liberating themselves or others. Even if they dabble in the Dharma Their motivation is one seeking the pleasures of samsara. So having cut their roots of virtue, they are in a state where either temporarily or perpetually they cannot attain liberation or awakening. Okay. So this is quite a strong view in this particular Chitta school. Okay. And, and so it says, not everybody has the Buddha potential. Some people are just not going to attain full awakening. Yeah. Okay. Then also within the Chitta school, the reasoning proponents, they have a different assertion. So first of all, for them, the disposition is, they don't assert a mind basis of all, foundation consciousness. So they say the mental consciousness carries the disposition. And then based on the Lotus Sutra, they, and the Sublime Continuum by Maitreya and Sanga's commentary on it, they speak of 4 types of people whose Buddha nature is defiled in that they are not yet ready to enter the Bodhisattva vehicle, engage in the 2 collections of merit and wisdom, and progress on the path to full awakening. So these people, have the Buddha nature, but it hasn't been awakened very much, and it's going to take a long time for them. So these are worldly people who are infatuated with samsaric pleasures. People like that? Okay, non-Buddhists who hold wrong views, like asserting a permanent person or a permanent soul. People like that? Probably. Okay. The Shravakas, or hearers, and the solitary realizers. Okay, so those 4 categories of people, it's going to take them a while. And for the Shravakas and the solitary realizers, they will attain their own enlightenments first, which is arhatship, and then the Buddha will convince them to enter the Mahayana, the Bodhisattva vehicle, and attain full awakening. Okay, so different ways of presenting this. Yeah. Okay, so then we're going to go on to the Madhyamaka school and how it presents Buddha nature. So here we say that all sentient beings have the Buddha nature. And eventually, we say that it's one final vehicle, meaning everybody eventually will enter the Mahayana and become a Buddha. So according to the Sublime Continuum, this is the main text by Maitreya that speaks of Buddha nature. Okay, so the Sublime Continuum defines Buddha nature as phenomena that have the possibility to transform into any of the 3 bodies of a Buddha. Okay. So it's of 2 types, the naturally abiding Buddha nature and the transforming Buddha nature. Okay. So both of these Buddha natures exist in all sentient beings, whether or not they are on a path right now. Okay. So no matter how poorly somebody's acting, no matter what views they hold, they still have the Buddha potential. So this is very good to remember when you get mad at people, okay, or when you get discouraged about society, or when you just fall into despair. then it's very important to remember everybody has the Buddha nature. Okay, so we cannot sign anybody off and say that they are inherently evil and wicked and should be exterminated or whatever, because everybody has this potential to become a Buddha. So the naturally abiding Buddha nature is the emptiness of the mind that, okay, the emptiness of the mind, and it's a particular mind, the mind that is yet to abandon defilements. Okay, so I don't know about you, but that's the emptiness of my mind. Yeah, so it's the emptiness of the mind that is yet to abandon defilements, and that is able to transform into the nature Dharmakaya of a Buddha. Okay, so it's the emptiness of the present mind that when we, which, okay, in my case anyway, is a defiled mind, it's still, its ultimate nature is still lacking in inherent existence. Okay, when my mind is purified, then the emptiness of that mind becomes the nature truth body of the Buddha. Okay, so the naturally abiding Buddha nature is the same empty, it's the emptiness of the mind. The nature truth body is the emptiness of the mind, but they aren't different. They are different, but not in the quality of the emptiness. Emptiness is emptiness. Yeah, there's not different kinds of lack of inherent existence, but they're differentiated because one is the emptiness of a mind with afflictions that haven't been eliminated. The others is the emptiness of a mind that is unpolluted, where the afflictions have and defilements have been eliminated. Okay. So there's a very nice quotation here from Nagarjuna. Whatever is the essence of the Tathagata, that is the essence of the transmigrator. The Tathagata has no essence, meaning is not inherently existent. The transmigrator also has no essence. Okay? So both minds are emptiness of inherent existence. Okay. There's another quote here from the 8,000 line Perfection of Wisdom. Thus, that which is the reality of all things, emptiness, is not past or future or present. Whatever is neither past, future, nor present is utterly free from threefold time. It cannot be transferred, nor objectified, nor conceptualized, nor cognized. Okay? That doesn't mean that you can't cognize emptiness. You can, but with a special kind of mind. We can't cognize emptiness with our sense faculties. Okay. Then the transforming Buddha nature is any factor that exists in our mind now that can become, that can grow and increase and be nourished and become a quality of the Buddha's mind. Okay, so these include our present love, compassion, integrity, consideration for others, faith, trust, confidence in the three jewels. Okay, our wisdom, all, our concentration, all factors that we have now that can be nourished and become the qualities of the Buddha. Okay, our anger, our attachment, our jealousy, our pride, these are not the transforming Buddha nature because they are factors that need to be eliminated by practicing the path. Okay. However, the clear and cognizant nature of the mind which all mental states have, that can go on to Buddhahood. Okay, so just the bare, clear, and cognizant conventional nature of the mind, that can go on to Buddhahood. When that clear, cognizant, conventional nature of the mind is associated with afflictions, then we say that whole mental state cannot go on to Buddhahood. But if we separate it out, then we can say the affliction is to be abandoned, but the clear and cognizant nature of the mind can go on. So this gets into how our Nyingma friends interpret Buddha nature. Okay. Then Buddha nature according to Tantra. So highest yoga Tantra points to Buddha nature in a unique way. It is the subtlest mind wind that is empty of inherent existence and whose continuity goes on to awakening. All sentient beings have this subtlest mind wind. In ordinary beings, it becomes manifest only at the time of the clear light of death. And in ordinary beings, it usually goes unnoticed. So what we're trying to do in Tantra is make manifest this extremely subtle mind, which is one nature with this extremely subtle mind wind. Okay. And if we can make that manifest either during our lives through tantric practice or just after the time of death, at the time of death, I should say, then direct that mind to emptiness, use it to realize emptiness, then it has a particular ability to eliminate all the afflictions very quickly. And that's the one of the special attributes of Tantrayana. Okay, so the Havajra Tantra says, sentient beings are just Buddhas, but they are defiled by adventitious stains. When these are removed, they are Buddhas. Okay, so some schools will say, we are Buddhas now, but our mind is covered in adventitious stains. The Galupas say that's kind of contradictory to say we're already Buddhas, because that would mean that we're pretty ignorant Buddhas. So the way they say it is, we have the Buddha nature, but it is covered at the moment, and we need to eliminate those adventitious defilements to actually become Buddhas. Okay, so you can get into all sorts of debates about this with your Nyingma friends, but it basically comes down to the same point. Okay, that we have to access that extremely subtle mind wind and use it to realize emptiness. Then we're running out of time, but just to let you know, then the chapter goes into 9 similes for Tathagata Garbha, which is quite beautiful similes that help us think about it. And which we don't have time now, but read the book, okay? So I want to open it to questions and maybe answers. She just read a question from last week.
Yeah, so what do you recommend when one thinks or discovers their spiritual guide has hurt people?
Okay, will they hear that? Did you unmute yourself? Or
we will start echoing.
Oh, okay. So what happens when you think, or
what do you recommend when you think or discover?
Yeah, what do you recommend when you think or discover that your spiritual mentor has done something harmful to other sentient beings? Okay, so think and discover are different. Yeah. Think is we have an idea, maybe something fishy is going on. Discover is okay? So at the level of think, it's only rumors. It's only thoughts, yeah? So what do? It depends on the situation you're in. If it's the teacher at a Buddhist center, you may go to the board of directors of the center, tell them what has been seen, heard, or suspected, and ask them to do an investigation, an impartial investigation. Okay? And then hopefully, if they're smart, they will do an impartial investigation. So it's really important, I think, to have this impartial investigation because it's a really dicey subtopic when you think that your teacher's done something fishy. Because if you start saying it as a fact, but you don't have the evidence, then people will start quarreling. Okay? And also, you as one individual making an accusation, then it also, it doesn't go over so well. So that's why even if you're an individual and something happened, go to a group of people and ask them to make an impartial investigation. Okay? Not to brush it under the rug. Yeah. Not to ignore it. Not to say it's the action of a Buddha and we just don't understand the Buddha's actions. Because we exist in a conventional world and we need to relate in that way. So you might know that some a few years ago, there was one Lama from Sarah J. And there were reports of some unbecoming behavior. And so a group of the senior bhikshunis, we started a petition calling for the organization that sponsored him and his teaching in their centers to do an impartial investigation. Okay? Now, many people said, "Oh, how can you say that? He's a Buddha. Aren't we supposed to see our teacher as the Buddha? He's a Buddha. So, you're breaking your samaya, you're creating all sorts of negativity." But no, they misunderstood. We were not saying he's guilty. We were saying people have come forward to us with things and we want to see it investigated. Okay. It took a lot of time and energy to convince that organization to do the impartial investigation. And they only really did it when there were several women involved, when the women said that they would bring it into the courts in the countries where this behavior was done. So then they did an investigation, and there's now a whole business. I don't want to call it a business, a group or whatever you call it, of people who will do these kind of investigations for spiritual groups. Because as we all know, look at the Catholic Church, what they've been up against, and evangelical Christians, and, you name it, everybody has these kinds of things. So there's one, it was called Faith Trust Initiative. And so they hired that group to do the investigation. And as it turned out, it was validated. These actions had been done. Okay. So if you discover, meaning that you know that things have been done, then it's good, again, to go to the organization And I think, again, here too, ask for an impartial investigation, because even if you know for sure, other people don't. And it's a very painful topic for people to deal with when these accusations come forth, because some people have incredible faith in their teacher and they don't know how to put this together with some of the teacher's behavior that doesn't seem very kosher. Okay, so it's always good to have an investigation by impartial, who interviews the people, who checks the accusations, whether they can be validated or not, and then impartially presents the situation. I think that's much better. Okay, so that's what to do. In terms of your own practice, that's much harder. And I actually, here, because time is short, I'm going to refer you to a series of talks I gave a few years ago. Do you remember the year? Yeah, she's going to find it. Because people of Rigpa, I'm sure you all know of the scandals in Rigpa. Okay, so people came to me and said, some people were saying, I've lost my faith. Other people were saying, he's still my teacher and I can't put this together. And there was so much mass confusion and upset, not only in the organization, but in people's minds, because they trusted this teacher and then the teacher did questionable behavior. So I gave a whole series of talks about how to see this in terms of being a practitioner and, how to still maintain a feeling of gratitude and appreciation for that teacher, for what they did to help you in the Dharma, and yet how to also hold that there was some misconduct in there, okay? That you can hold both of those things at the same time. And I was at a conference in 1993 of Western Buddhist teachers with His Holiness. And some of the teachers brought this up. And His Holiness, he shared something very personal. And it winds up, he was in the same situation. If you know anything about Tibetan history, his first two regents, Tatra Rinpoche and Reting Rinpoche, were at war with each other. Okay, can you imagine your two main tantric lamas are quarreling with each other? And Reting Rinpoche was from Sarijay Monastery, and the Tibetan government was fighting with Sarijay Monastery with weapons. Okay, and Tatra Rinpoche was with the side of the Tibetan government, and Reting Rinpoche was with Sarijay Monastery. Imagine this chaos going on in society and in people's minds. And His Holiness, he was a kid at that time. He was he was a teenager, okay? And he had to deal with this. So what he said is, he said, when I'm doing my meditation, and I'm seeing my teachers as the Buddha, because they're the ones who taught me the Dharma, they're the ones who gave me the initiation, who taught me these wonderful practices. Only a Buddha could have done that. So I see them as a Buddha. But when I stop my meditation and I have to deal with the affairs of the Tibetan government, I look at both of my teachers and I tell them, what you're doing is wrong. It needs to stop. And we Westerners were sitting there aghast, like, how can you hold both of those things together in one mind. And yet we saw with His Holiness, it is possible, that we don't have to make somebody all good or all bad. We can say in this situation, we see them as a Buddha. In this situation, we tell them to stop that behavior. It was an incredible moment, really, that I know for myself personally, just opened my mind. Yeah. And so that way you don't have to, you can hold seemingly contradictory things and find that they aren't contradictory. Did you find the year?
Yeah, 2017, and I posted it in the chat.
Oh, so she just posted it in the chat box. You can copy it there. Okay, then Kent, you have a question.
Yeah, I actually have two, but we'll. But I'll start with the first one. Go all the way back to when you were talking about the media. Not only do I work in the media, I work at a newspaper. I'm also on the radio. I'm an arts critic, arts and entertainment critic, and I write editorials. So when you said all of that, it's like, should I be doing this at all? One, and two, is it real? It's not intentionally done to create division on my part, right? But it's inevitable that happens, right? At least because what I write, even if you're writing straight fact, I'll give you an example. I had to do a concert review, 2 concert reviews. There's a mask mandate here. One of them, the guy, both country artists, one of them got up and said, don't wear your mask, blah, 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 right? So I write that, and I get 200, 300, literally 300 comments on the post, and who knows how many more, saying that this was a I said that because I was politically against him, right? Then 2 weeks later, Garth Brooks played a stadium show here, 90,000 people, and all the people on the other side got upset when I wrote that, in fact, it didn't turn out to be a super spreader, because it didn't. So I managed to make both sides of this.
Yeah, you made everybody unhappy. Congratulations.
Yes.
But the thing that is important is your motivation. If you can state the facts very plainly and simply, without any emotional words, without embellishing things, without inferring wrongdoing. Yeah. And so that's what you want to do, is write it in that manner. And then if people get upset because they've imputed stuff on it, that's their business. But what we often find is people don't just state the facts. They embellish it. Yeah. And that's, when I think it then it's done with the deliberate intention to rev people up, which is unfortunate.
And I can do that if I want to. I can do that very well. I used to do talk radio. I can set people on fire in a hurry.
Yes.
I don't do that anymore, but I used to.
Good. Yeah.
My question, regarding the Buddha nature.
Yeah.
As you went through this, the question occurred to me: did these sort of schools build on this? Like, did it start, with sort of and then each one build on top of it to get to a different understanding, or were they developed what's the interrelationship?
Yeah, between them. there's the historical perspective of what actually happened. And then there's the perspective from categorizing them as tenet systems. Okay? Because historically speaking, for example, the Madhyamaka system came before the Chittamatra, historically. But in this, how we talked about Buddha nature, the Chittamatra position is seen first, and then it looks like the Madhyamaka built on top of that. Because when they talk about the tenet systems, it's not really explained. The purpose isn't to give you a historical explanation. It's actually a pedagogical tool to start out with the systems that are first are the ones that correspond more to our present way of thinking, that are easier for us to accept. And then gradually, as we practice, then we can look and say, oh yeah, I believe that lower system, but now I see some flaws in it. And the next system up now makes more sense. And so then you practice that. And then you get to a point, well, no, this one isn't answering all my questions. And then you look at the next one up. Okay. So that is a way of leading us to the correct view. And it's also a way of showing us as we go through that journey, what are the key areas that we have to look at and understand, to arrive at at the correct view. Because these are the areas that the different systems will debate with each other. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
We're at time.
Yeah, actually, we're out of time now. Okay, so we'll dedicate.